Today's film Alien Covenant is the second part of Prometheus's, and I recommend you to watch it first. It's about a space mission that discovers an unknown planet and finds terrifying creatures that want to destroy humans and take their place. The story begins with the creation of the robot David, and Dr. Peter Nose tells him that he is the creator of the robot and that he has a lot of abilities and give him the name David. But what makes David wonder is that if Peter made him, then who made Peter himself? And Peter hesitates to answer this question and says that together they will find a convincing answer. Years later, exactly in 2104, we find the ship, Covenant, in space with 15 crew members, 2,000 humans, and a large number of embryos trying to reach the planet Aurigae 6, which the humans will live and reproduce on it. But they have 7 years and 4 months to go until they reach it. On board the ship, all the humans are asleep, and the only one controlling the ship is the robot Walter, a clone of David, whose job is to make sure that everything on the ship goes smoothly until they reach the new planet. On that day, a massive energy wave bursts in space caused by the explosion of a nearby star, and that causes a lot of problems for the ship. Walter and the ship's computer try to wake up the entire crew, and within seconds, many of them wake up. But an error in the system occurs, and a number of people die, including the captain himself, whose room is on fire and he gets burned. The ship's crew is in a horrible situation, suddenly waking up to a catastrophe, and some of them are dead, but they try to complete the mission, remove the bodies, and see what they can do. Daniel sits in her room crying because the captain who died was her husband, and she can't bear the pain of losing him. Orem is now the captain of the ship and meets with the crew and informs them that they have lost 47 humans, 16 embryos, and the captain, the ship itself is in very good condition. But many systems are not working, and they need to fix them and make sure that this problem doesn't happen again. In spite of the pain, Daniels is working and trying to fix the malfunctions, and Walter is helping her. And together, they go through all the parts of the ship and make sure everything is in order. Then they meet 2 crew members who release the captain's body into space, which upsets Orem because he gave them the order to repair the ship first. And Karen tries to make him understand that they were just saying goodbye to their friend. Tennessee is sent into space to fix a problem with the power sail and get it back to normal, which is their biggest problem. And when he fixes it, the systems are back running and the ship is working perfectly. But while Tennessee is returning to the ship, he encounters a problem with the communication system and a very difficult jamming, because of which he can't talk to the ship's control room. When he gets back to the ship, he sits down with the rest of the crew to find out what exactly happened and realize that Tennessee has received a signal from a nearby planet. Despite the fact that the signal is jammed, they know that it's a song that they know well. The crew is very surprised and is able to pinpoint the exact location of the planet. After analyzing this planet, they find it a very habitable planet, very Earth-like, and much more close than Aurigae 6 they were going to, and even better than it. Because they will be able to reach this strange planet in a week, Orem decides to go and see for himself if it is habitable, despite the objections of some of the crew members who want to continue their mission. Daniels talks to Orem in private and says it's a very strange situation, a perfect planet that appeared out of nowhere, and we didn't know anything about it. And no one saw it during the space survey when they were looking for a habitable planet. It's a very strange thing, and it's very suspicious, and she wants to get on with her mission. But Orem convinces her that it's the best decision he can make with the data they've found, and he decides to go to the planet despite her strong objections. The ship reaches this strange planet and continues to orbit around the planet to analyze it, and the captain and Daniels, along with Walter and a number of the crew, take a smaller ship and descend to the planet. Although the weather is extremely rainy, thunder and lightning at this time, they manage to land safely on the water. The strange thing is that this planet is very similar to Earth, as if it is a copy of it in everything. And for insurance, the crew takes powerful weapons and goes out to the planet, amazed by its shape and beauty, but at the same time afraid of the unknown. Ferris stays in the small ship to secure it and lock it up. Orem goes out with the rest of the guys and begins to explore the planet with great caution. And Walter locates the source of the signal they picked up exactly 8 kilometers away. As they walk along, they find wheat, but it's much larger, and they ask themselves, how can Earth's wheat be here? But the big question is, who planted it on this planet? Karen is waiting to do research at a certain point, and one of the crew members stays with her to protect her, while the rest of them continue on their way. But they notice that there are trees whose tops have been completely destroyed, as if something has hit them with great force. And what is interesting to them is that, until now, they have not met any animal, bird, or anything at all, which is very strange. While the person with Karen, whose name is Ledward, is walking past her, he steps on a strange object that emits particles that react with cigarette smoke and turn into a black substance of very small size, which penetrates his body and spreads in his body. At the same time, the rest of the crew arrives at a giant wrecked ship, which was the source of the signal they received, and they decide to approach it and explore it, and it's obvious from its shape and the technology in it that it is not human and from another civilization. When they look around, they find a strange-looking ball that also emits the same black substance and penetrates Tom's body without noticing, and the crew continues to search the ship. They find a chain belonging to Dr. Elizabeth Shaw, and through Walter's data, he finds out that she was the leader of the scientific expedition on the Prometheus, which mysteriously disappeared 10 years ago, and what they wonder is what brought her chain here on this strange ship. The crew is able to reach the ship's control center and find a video recording of Elizabeth controlling the ship and singing the same song they heard, confirming that this is the source of the signal. Meanwhile, Ledward is feeling very tired and can't breathe, so Karen calls Orem and tells him what happened and that they're going back to the ship. Orem and the rest of the crew decide to go back to the ship as well, but suddenly Tom starts to get tired and falls, so they help him and make their way back to the ship, and all this information is sent to Tennessee, who is on the main ship and starts to get worried. Ferris runs to help Karen and Ledward and is shocked to see that he has fallen and is bleeding terribly. But Karen grabs him and takes him to the treatment room and holds him there while Tennessee sits and listens to all this. Within seconds, Ledward's back splits open, Ferris comes out, terrified, and locks them in the room. Moments later, he begins to convulse violently, and a strange creature emerges from his back and splits him in half. Karen runs and grabs her gun to defend herself, but the creature acts aggressively, attacking her and killing her with terrible brutality. Ferris runs, grabs a machine gun and tries to attack the creature, but she falls to the ground, runs in terror, and closes the door again. But the creature is able to break the glass of the door and runs after her as she grabs another weapon and tries to kill it. But the bullets go into the gas tanks, and a terrible explosion occurs. The whole ship is destroyed in front of the eyes of the rest of the crew members, who stand watching the strange creature get out of the ship with the fire still on it. At the same time, Tom begins to convulse as well, and suddenly there is blood coming out of his mouth and another creature is running away from them. Because of the dangerous situation, Tennessee tries to communicate with the crew on the planet, but because of the storm, he can't, so he decides to get closer to the planet. But this is too dangerous for the ship, so the rest of the crew agrees to wait. In the meantime, Daniels tries to communicate with the mothership, but she can't. The creature gets closer, and Walter tries to stop it. The rest of the crew aim their weapons at it, but the creature is too strong for them and attacks them with great speed, then escapes, and Walter loses an arm in the attack. The second creature comes and attacks the crew even faster, but at that moment, a person appears and shoots a torch into the air that gives off a very strong light, and the creatures flee the scene in terror. The person turns out to be David and tells them to follow him if they want to live. They all move after him, shocked by the horror of what they've seen. He takes them to the walls of a city where all the bodies are burned, and the sight is horrifying. Hundreds of thousands of people have already died in the same horrible way, which makes the team even more shocked and terrified. They walk past the bodies until they come to a building and start to panic, asking themselves, what the hell happened here? David explains that 10 years ago, he and Elizabeth Shaw were the only survivors of the Prometheus. The ship they were traveling in discovered it had a deadly viral weapon in its atmosphere, and as they were landing, the door accidentally opened and they lost control of the ship. Elizabeth died in the crash. The virus spread to the planet and destroyed all life here, and David has been trying to survive all this time. He tells them that the same virus infected their crew because it is designed to attack any life form except plants. The virus kills these creatures and uses them to produce the horrible creatures they have seen. He tells them that none of them have been infected and all of them are in good condition. But Orem knows they have to be sure because they can't take the virus with them on the main ship because their mission is to colonize a new planet and they don't want to risk failure. So David asks them how many people are on the ship and everything. Meanwhile, Lupe wants to communicate with the mothership and asks David for a way to the roof of the building to adjust the equipment. And he tells the crew to get some rest and let them know they're safe. Of course, he realizes that Walter is a semi-autonomous robot and welcomes him. Despite Lupe's attempts to communicate with the ship, he fails. On the other hand, Tennessee is worried about the crew on the planet and orders the ship's AI to bring them closer to the planet and away from the danger of the storm. Meanwhile, David shaves off his long hair and makes himself look exactly like Walter, then meets and talks to Walter. Walter asks him, "How come you're not surprised to see that I look exactly like you?" But David knows that every mission requires a robot, so it's not surprising that they're making robots that look exactly like him. He explains that he was with Dr. Peter in his last days, and that he didn't deserve to live or be created at all. And it's clear that the first model of robot had more abilities and was allowed to create and do things by his own, unlike Walter. He wasn't even allowed to play the flute because the humans realized that giving a robot the freedom to make things and think for itself was too dangerous. While the crew is thinking about what happened, Orem apologizes to Daniels because she was right, and his decision to explore the planet led to the loss of 5 crew members, and he feels guilty. David thinks back to when the ship arrived on the planet 10 years ago, and the giant white creatures were so happy to see the ship because it was theirs in the first place, and they looked at it with pride and happiness. Suddenly, the doors of the ship opened, and black matter came out of it, creating a giant, scary cloud, and the white creatures tried to escape. But the black substance attacked them, and thousands died in a few moments, and the substance that they created to eliminate living things was the cause of their death. And above all, David stood in the ship, watching, happy and proud of what he had done. Of course, he doesn't tell Walter about the memory and shows him where Dr. Elizabeth is buried, and that he was very sad when she died and loved her very much. Walter tells them that he loves Daniels too, and that's why he sacrificed his own life to protect her. In the meantime, the scary creature approaches the city walls, climbs them, and tries to reach the humans to eliminate them. Suddenly, it appears in front of one of the crew and attacks her with its scary teeth, its body much bigger and stronger, and within seconds it is able to finish her off very easily as her screams of death spread all over the place. Finally, Lupe is able to communicate with Tennessee and let him know that many people are dead and need someone to come and get them off this cursed planet. Tennessee tries to get the mothership to go down into the storm to help the crew, but the ship refuses because it would put the ship in too much danger. This requires the rest of the crew to agree to it, and they do, so the ship begins to descend further and further. Orem begins to worry about the girl who died, so he goes to check on her, while David goes there and sees the horrible creature feeding on her. David and the creature stand staring at each other as if they are talking and discussing. When Orem arrives, he sees this scene and prepares to kill the creature. David tries to stop him because he is communicating with him, but Orem shoots and kills him. David is furious, saying how could he kill it after the creature trusted him? And Orem is shocked that the creature just killed one of their own. While David is trying to approach with it, he points the gun at David and asks him to tell him exactly what's going on. As the ship arrives in the middle of the storm, they are able to talk to Daniels, and she asks Tennessee to send them the small cargo ship, although it is not designed to work in these conditions. But he agrees, as it is their only solution, and asks him to talk to Ferris, his wife, and Daniels tells him the sad news that she died, and he is very shocked and cries from grief and pain. At the same time, David takes Orem to his lab and shows him quantities of the virus he still has and says that over time, he has become interested in the organisms that were on this planet. He tells him that this virus was brutally invented but brilliantly manufactured, and that with time, he can understand it more and deal with it. Basically, the virus produces parasites that enter the body, rearrange the DNA, and produce monstrous creatures. As Orem watches, he realizes that David has been busy researching these creatures, calling them his beautiful animals that he created with his own hands, and even started to develop them. He realizes that David has gone crazy and is interested in creating creatures like humans have created him, and he wants to create and control them. Finally, David takes him to a room where there are giant eggs for the last creatures he have created, and he realizes that in this situation, they are waiting for a mother to let them emerge. Suddenly, a creature emerges from the egg and very quickly attacks Orem, sticking him in the face and strangling him horribly, while David watches, happy and proud of himself. Meanwhile, Rosie is worried about the rest of the crew and is shocked to find the creature dead, along with the body of his girlfriend. He goes back to the rest of the crew and tells them what happened. Daniels is terrified and wants to get out of there immediately and tells them to find Orem and regroup in 15 minutes. She calls Tennessee and gets him to send a cargo ship to the planet immediately to save them from death. Strangely enough, Orem wakes up and finds himself in front of David and asks him what exactly he's doing and what his goal is, and he simply answers that his goal is to create creatures and be their leader. Suddenly, Orem's belly splits open and a bloody creature emerges, obviously much stronger than the others, and David smiles, communicates with him, and makes him obey his orders. In the meantime, Walter goes to David's lab and finds Elizabeth's body, on which he was conducting research, and goes to confront David with what he understood. He did understand that the virus was not accidentally released as he said when he landed the ship, but that he released it on purpose. David confesses to him the truth, that he isn't made for only following orders. And over time, he realized that living beings, including humans, had become weak and were dying. So they wanted a fresh start, but they didn't deserve a fresh start, and he will stop them, and other creatures stronger, more perfect, would take their place, and he would be their master and creator. Because Walter's programming is different, he disagrees, and David stabs him in the neck and disables him. Meanwhile, the team spreads out to find Orem, and Daniels finds the planet's library and begins to read it and understand them better. During the search, the team comes across the creature that came out of the egg and attacks Lupe, shooting a caustic substance into his face, and his teammate tries to help him. At that moment, the new huge creature appears. It looked bigger and more terrifying than it was moments ago, and Lupe runs away, leaving his friend for dead. While Daniels is searching, David comes and finds her reading his papers that he wrote, and she realizes that Elizabeth did not die in the crash, so he confesses to her that he did researches on her. He grabs Daniels and beats her. She tries to defend herself, but it's no use, and that's when Walter shows up, having been able to repair himself because he's the later version. He grabs David and hits him, they fight each other, and there is a strong battle between them, full of deadly blows, fast and very strong, showing that Walter is much stronger and more violent than David. Daniels and Lobi meet and start running away from the place as fast as they can. Tennessee finds them and takes them to escape and sees that Walter has survived, so they take him with them and run away. And he says that he has destroyed David, but the terrifying creature jumps onto the ship and holds on tightly, not wanting to let go to finish them off. Daniels comes out and shoots it with her gun, hitting it a few times, but it escapes and tries to attack again, breaking the lock and entering to the ship. Daniels decides to take control of a powerful robot arm and fights the creature with it, squeezing it rigidly, twisting it, and throwing it onto the planet. She struggles to get back to the cargo ship, which is having trouble controlling it. But Tennessee takes control and flies it back to the mothership safely, and they decide to continue their journey to Origai 6 and complete their mission. While on the mothership, they discover an unknown creature on the ship and realize that Lupe is dead and the creature has escaped. So Daniels and Tennessee grab their weapons and try to locate the creature, which is about to kill 2 of the crew members who are taking a shower, so they quickly pull out their weapons to save them. But unfortunately, the creature is able to get to them early and kills them horribly. Daniels comes up with a plan and orders all the ship's doors to be locked, and they drag the creature along a certain route until it reaches the airlock. They trick him into entering a ship, and once he's in it, they throw the ship into space with the creature in it and get rid of him forever in space, where he is doomed to die. After these terrible adventures, the 2 remaining crew members decide to ask Walter to put them in stasis until they reach the new planet. And before Daniels falls asleep, Walter confesses that he is David, and Walter are actually dead, and that he has taken his place and tricked them, and will continue what he is doing against everyone's will while she falls asleep with nothing to do. Quietly, he pulls out embryos of these terrifying creatures, places them in freezers, and waits for them to reach their new planet so they can feed on thousands of humans.